the 11th Bite of Christmas. When you look at Christmas cards or movies, you will almost always see classic scenes featuring snow. Streets, houses and trees covered in blankets of white powder, children throwing snowballs or building snowmen and snowwomen, people skating on iced-over lakes or tobogganing down hills. Snow and ice is synonymous with Christmas, and these meteorological wonders come with the inherent risk of slipping, resulting in the classic fall on an outstretched hand, or FOOSH. For those of us residing in the southern hemisphere, we do not share these icy perils at Christmas. The only ice worries we have is whether there is enough to keep our beer and white wine chilled. But Christmas down under does come with some FOOSH risks too. The recent rise in popularity of hoverboards and scooters mean many get gifted at Christmas, resulting in people who are old enough to know better falling off whilst trying to impress the kids. So regardless of what caused the FOOSH this Christmas, what injuries do we need to be considering? Here is Director of Clinical Training, Dr. Dave Sorrell.
So ice skating injuries obviously are very much a Northern Hemisphere injury, certainly at this time of the year. And I think what we will be seeing this summer is Lime scooter injuries. And we had a very interesting patient who fell over on a Lime scooter on the weekend and came to see us with abrasions and a sore hand. So he had swelling on the dorsum of his hand, and on his x-ray he appeared to have a fracture of the triquetrum, which of course is the second most common carpal bone fracture. And I was concerned because this fracture appeared to be quite big, and so I referred him in for a CT scan with the orthopedic team. The CT scan actually showed a triquetral fracture and a pisiform fracture. And of course, you're really getting down to the low percentages of hand injuries when you get to that. So the commonest FOOSH injury if you injure a carpal bone is the scaphoid. Second commonest is the triquetrum, and the rest of them make up a 1% or less of hand injuries. But if you're not thinking about that, then you won't see it. And the interesting thing is, I don't think that clinically he had any pisiform signs, but certainly when I looked at his hand, that dorsal swelling mid-carpal, it's like, ooh, I wonder if you've got a triquetral fracture. And when we consider that, there's three types of triquetral fractures. There is dorsal avulsion fractures, which are chip fractures. There's volar avulsion fractures, which are chip fractures. And then there's body fractures. So of those, body fractures are the more important ones and can be significant. There's very good evidence that dorsal and volar chip fractures can be managed by splinting alone, but that body fractures should require cast or even operative repair. This guy has got the complication of massive skin loss as well associated with the abrasion. So he's been managed in a splint for a week and then a cast without operation. So obviously other FOOSH injuries, there's distal radial fractures, radial head injuries. So when they fall on the hand, the force is transmitted up to the elbow. And you can get more commonly radial neck fractures in children, but in adults, radial head fractures. And the only sign you often see is that anterior and posterior fusion of the elbow. So if someone falls on the hand and they've got some forearm pain, so interestingly enough, often their elbow doesn't hurt, and it's uncomfortable to rotate, and they've got an effusion, they've probably got a fracture of their radial head. Now, you don't need to see it because often it's invisible. The classifications of radial head fractures is by Mason, and so it's Mason's type 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 is the invisible one. So in my opinion, if someone falls over and has forearm to elbow pain and an effusion, they've got a Mason's type 1. If they're not that sore, they don't need to go into a cast. You can actually just immobilize them in a sling because you don't want to immobilize them for too long, even though the fracture may take 4 to 6 weeks to heal. So my protocol for that is you fall over, you've got an effusion, you're in a sling if you're not that sore for a week, and then we re-x-ray it at 7 to 10 days and see how it is. If there's no displacement at that point, we would get them moving but without any loading through the elbow.
Now we'll be back tomorrow with the 12th and final bite of Christmas. I look forward to seeing you all then. But for now, thanks for listening.